So if you're not familiar, my name is Trevor Lecca. I'm Dubsato's product education lead. And like I was just mentioning, today we're going to be talking about aligning your sales and budget for maximum profitability, all about your finances today. And I know that finances aren't necessarily the sexiest topic for small business owners, but it is a very important one, especially with tax season pretty much upon us, right around the corner. And especially since, the beginning of the year is also a great time to think about what you might want to be doing differently this year in 2025. So we have a really great guest for y'all here today. Her name is Annie Hillman, and she's the founder and CEO of 1428 Financial, and she's got over 12 years of accounting experience. She just has a passion for bookkeeping and financial education, and she's been empowering business owners to take control of their finances for a long time now. And she's a longtime Dubsado user, which makes her probably our go-to resource for turning financial uncertainty into financial confidence, which is what she is all about. So I'm really excited to hear what she has to say as far as understanding your finances better, understanding your sales goals even better to hopefully achieve better profitability. It's going to be a really interesting session today. So I'm going to go ahead and bring on Annie Hillman. I'll give it just a second for her to jump in here. There we go. Hi, Annie. Hear me okay?
Yep, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be here, and I apologize to everyone for my voice. I woke up this morning and it was just not here, so we're gonna do the best that we can.
It's totally okay. I really appreciate you sticking it out, and hopefully you're feeling okay. I
Yeah,
apologize, but thank you for being here.
I think we're good.
Cool.
I'm excited to chat about this.
Fantastic. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and put myself away and take it away, Annie. Thank you.
All righty, I'm gonna share my screen. I have some slides here. Excuse me. Can everybody see that? Um, okay, so the first thing I want to say is if you have questions, please let us know throughout the webinar. I really want this to be interactive, so just let us know any questions you have come up while we're watching. But like I said, I'm really excited to talk about this today. I think this is the perfect time of year to talking about sales goals and budgeting, and who doesn't want to maximize profitability? I think we all want to do that. So what we're going to talk about today, we're going to talk about the power of creating a budget for your business, creating your basic business budget and how to do that, setting realistic revenue targets and sales goals alignment, because we want to make sure that our sales goals are aligned not only with our budget and where we want to take our business, but also with our life, because that's important. We're really big proponents of life first businesses. So we want to make sure that our sales goals are aligned with that. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is me just for a brief second. Like Trevor said, I'm Annie Hillman, founder and CEO of 1428 Financial. I've been in the accounting world for over a decade now. I got my start in winery accounting. And then 5 years ago, I started 1428 Financial and kind of ran from there. I love getting to work with small business owners and just helping you guys understand your finances and how important that is for your business. So I want to start with a question, and you guys can drop this in the chat. But my question for you is, what is your biggest challenge with budgeting for your business? If anybody's brave enough, I think we can do. I'll pull up the chat. We'll see. So I put up a question box on my Instagram last week with this same question because I really wanted to kind of get a feel for where people were at with their business budget. And some of the things that we got, some of the answers that I got were, it's too hard. I don't know where to start. It's so restrictive. It never works. Yeah, so Sandy said inconsistent income. Pam said not knowing how much money I'm actually going to make, budgeting for marketing. Yeah, so inconsistent income is a huge one. As most of our businesses have some sort of ebb and flow as to our income, and especially for creative business owners. I have some photographers that we work with that are our clients, and obviously you guys all probably know that photographers have a very big swing in their income, and so planning for that is really important. Excuse me. That's a really good point. Jenna said matching my QuickBooks chart of accounts is something that makes sense in our head. We're really big proponents of creating a custom chart of accounts for you and your business, and making sure that that makes sense, because looking at a profit and loss or looking at your reports that have these accounts that mean nothing to you are going to mean that your numbers mean nothing to you. So that's a very big one as well. Okay. So, excuse me. Why this topic matters specifically for creative businesses. You guys might be thinking about like what I call the old way of budgeting, which is very restrictive. It's not responsive. It's generally just not helpful. That is not what we're talking about here. We don't believe in restrictive budgets. We don't believe in budgets that have no flexibility. We believe in budgets that are free, that are not restrictive, and that allow you to spend well and spend in alignment to reach your goals. Excuse me. Get a sip real quick. Okay. So there's a lot, I know that there's a lot of resistance, especially with creative business owners, when it comes to budgeting, and I totally get it. You know, you guys are so good at the things that you're doing. You're so good at photography or written web design or whatever it is that you do, whatever your zone of genius is. Budgeting tends to fall to the wayside, and it can feel something, I know, it can feel daunting. I know I've heard my clients say that. It can feel like just so out of your, outside of your zone of genius. And I totally get that. A lot of times I know when talking with clients or even with other business owners, they hear the word budget and they think, "You, no, not for me. No, thank you. I'm done here." And I know that's a really common thought. But that's what I want to talk about today. Why it's doesn't have to be that way. And I want to pat you all on the back for being here, because that's step one. Step one to really getting to a place where a budget is helping your business and helping you reach your goals. I think one of the most common misconceptions is that budgets are rigid and that there's restriction, and there's a lot of fear around that. And I get it. Like, I wouldn't want to, my budget isn't restrictive, and I don't want that for me or my clients or for any of you. Excuse me. And I know a lot of times this stems from feeling overwhelmed by your numbers. But what we're going to talk about today is making a budget accessible and making it easy to understand. And again, very, very helpful for you and your business. A good budget empowers your creative decisions. It gives you the freedom to say yes to the right opportunities and to say no to the wrong opportunities without guilt. It gives you confidence in your pricing and deciding when to either increase your prices, keep them the same, or make any other adjustments. And a clear budget also gives you a clear picture of profitability overall and per client and project. So those are really, really important. I want to give you guys a real example of a business that we worked with. This is a marketing agency. And on our intake form, when we first started working together, she said, "I have a lack of awareness on my finances. Overall, I knew that things were good, but I was seeking to better understand the financials in my business." So we worked together. We created a budget and we created sales goals that aligned not only with her plans and goals for her business, they were realistic, and she was super excited about them. After working together, she had her highest revenue and highest profit month. She had a 41% increase in cash on hand, and our budget allowed her to give herself a raise, which we all love that, don't we? In her words, she said, "I feel much more clear and peaceful about the state of things. I am consistently seeing reports that share our progress, ups and downs, and I can look forward to knowing what's coming and how things ebb and flow rather than playing the consistent guessing game." Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is creating your business budget. So there's three components to your basic business budget: your sales goals, and we're going to dig deeper on this, your expenses. So these are both your fixed costs and your variable costs. Fixed costs are costs that are fixed. They're the same every month. So these are subscriptions like let's say your subscription for Dubsado, that's a subscription that's the same. Rent, yes, sometimes rent can increase, but generally it's the same per month. Variable costs, on the other hand, are things like contractors or team costs that if you're paying them hourly, they are different each month. Design costs, again, these are like costs that go into your design. Those can also be variable. Meals, you're not going to spend the exact same amount on meals every month. Cost of goods sold, those kind of things, those things that ebb and flow with your business. The last thing, and this is the most exciting, I think, is profit or owner's pay. We all want to pay ourselves. We start our businesses for a million different reasons, but one of them at the top of the list for pretty much all of us is paying ourselves. So that one's really important. We want to make sure we work that in when we're doing our budget. So first, we're going to talk about sales goals. So the first step to creating sales goals and revenue goals is deciding how much you want or need to bring home to yourself, to pay yourself as the owner. Now, this might feel backwards, but we're going to work backwards. So you want to first decide this, and hint, I'm going to say the best way to know this is by having a personal budget and knowing exactly how much you need to bring home. But it's important to know this because then you can then you're going to factor in your income and your expenses, and then you're going to be able to set goals and know how much revenue you need to bring in. Okay, so there's a couple considerations when setting sales goals. And the first one is the more data you have, the easier it is to create a aligned sales goal. And I'm talking about finances, but also with time. So how much time does XYZ take? If I am working on this project, I have this package, it generally takes me, I would say, 4 hours. So let's say having that data allows you to know, okay, this is how much it cost me. It cost me 4 hours. And I want everyone to repeat after me. We do not work for free. So you need to factor in your costs, because sometimes I think when we're talking about profitability, we forget to factor in our own time that goes into it. And again, as a business owner, you don't work for free, and you need to factor that, make sure you're factoring them in. So when I talk about the more data you have, I'm talking about, like I said, finances, knowing what are your costs, what's my profit, all those things. But again, also time, how much of your time goes into things, how much of your contractors' time, how much of your employees' time goes into things. The other thing that I think you need to get really, really clear on before setting sales goals is how much you want to work and how much you want to make. So those two things really have to be in alignment, because let's say, you're a photographer and you only want to do two shoots per month, but you want to take home 30K. Those things aren't really going to be in alignment, then that's going to be hard to do. So making sure that how much you want to work and how much you want to take home are in alignment is really, really important. Again, tracking your hours and how much time you spend on different tasks is really, really important. I will be the first to admit I'm not great at tracking my own hours well, I should say I wasn't until about 6 months or a year ago. I finally started using ClickUp to track all my time. And it's just having that clarity is really, really helpful. Jenna said it's a habit. It totally is a habit. And once you get in that habit, it's easy. Like now, before doing this webinar, I just went to ClickUp, took me 5 seconds to put in what I was about to do. And then now I know how much time I spent on this. So that's a really, really important one. Okay, so what I have for you here, if you scan this QR code, you're going to get our sales goal and offer mix calculator for free. On the next slide, I'm going to show you an example of what this is. Sorry. I wanted to give this to you guys for free as you're, excuse me, working through, so that we won't have time today to work through putting together your offer mix. But this is something that once you have your budget, you can, excuse me, you can do that on your own. So I have an example here of our sales goal and offer mix calculator. So the purple highlighted cells are what you're going to put in. So let's say that you want to take home $10,000. This is going to factor in how much you need to have for taxes, and then you're going to put in your profit percentage. This is important for you to know. Like I said, the more data you have, the easier these things are to do. The easiest way to figure out your profit percentage is, let's say that all the revenue you bring in is a pie, and there's a piece out of it that is your expenses. What's left, the percentage that's left, is your profit. So let's say you brought in, I'm gonna use really round numbers here. Let's say you brought in $100,000 last year in revenue. If you had $35,000 in expenses and you'd be left with $65,000 in profit, then your profit percentage is 65%. So that's something that's really like, there's also, if you're like, wait, how do I figure this out? Google profit percentage calculator, and you'll find it on Google as well. Just type in your numbers and you'll be able to do that. So the other piece of this is, or the next square down is, this calculates, and again, you only have to type in the purple cells. Everything else calculates on their own. It's going to calculate exactly how much revenue you need to bring in per month in order to achieve that goal. And then these last two squares here are if you have retainer clients specifically. If you don't, you can just stop there and say, okay, I need to have $19,723 per month. The last two are, let's say that your average client monthly retainer is $300, then this is a really extreme example. But you would need to have 66 retainer clients to reach that goal. And again, on the right, it's just the same exact stuff, just the annual amounts that you would need. Like I mentioned before, how much you want to work and how much you want to make have to be in alignment. And again, the more data you have, the easier it is to create these aligned sales goals. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is expenses. So the best place to start when looking at expenses is to look backwards. You might think, okay, I'm making a budget, but like, where do I even start? How do I know how much I'm going to spend on subscriptions this year or whatever it is? The best place to start is to look at the previous year. So we always use this as a starting point. So pull up your P&L from last year. We're still in January. This is a great time to do a budget. So let's say you're about to file your taxes. You have your profit and loss from last year. You pull that up, and whether you're using QuickBooks or a spreadsheet or Xero or whatever you're using, you can typically do it by month. And that will give you a really good starting place. So you'll look at last year's number, and that's your starting point. And then you can kind of update because you've created your sales goals. You can update your budget as far as the revenue that you're going to come in. But then you're going to want to look at those sales goals and look at the costs associated with them. Let's say you're a designer, for example. If you're designing 3 websites in a month, you're going to have to think about things like fonts, other design costs, or even like contractors and team, how much of their time is going to go into this. So once you have your baseline of last year's numbers, use your sales goals to kind of adjust your cost to match up with those sales goals, because like I said, most of us, I'm not going to make an assumption, a lot of us our sales goals increase each month, or at least each year. And so we want to make sure that our expenses in our budget are increasing as well. The last thing you want to do when you're looking at creating your budget for your expenses is looking at your calendar. So let's say next month you have a conference or a retreat. You need to plan for those costs, not only for the flights to get there, but also, hotels, meals on the road, anything like that. The other thing you want to do when you're looking at your calendar is plan for vacations and time off. We all ideally want to take some time off, take some time to rest or a break or go on vacation. So making sure your budget reflects that. Let's say, I know we have clients who like to take the month of July off because they have kids and it's hard for them to work that month anyways. And so their kids are home from school. So you need to make sure that your budget reflects the time off that you're taking. So if you're taking out time off in July, either, let's say perhaps your team expenses or your contractor expenses might be higher if your revenue is going to stay the same. Or maybe you just decide to kind of really lay low during that month, then your revenue is probably going to decrease. So planning for those things is important because, like everyone said in the morning, how it's so hard to, it's hard to make a budget when your income is not consistent. Planning ahead and is going to help you with that. And as well, thinking about the ebb and flow of your seasons. Again, to use the example of a photographer, photographers are busy in the summer, you guys know. And so you can look at your previous year and see how your income flowed and kind of use that when you're creating your budget. And also I think this is kind of getting into the weeds here, but also planning for different things like how you take deposits from clients as well can help you spread out your income and then therefore make things a little less inconsistent. Okay, so we've talked about our sales goal. We've talked about our expenses. The next thing we're going to do is talk about putting it all together. So you put it all together, you say, okay, these are my sales goals. These are my expense budgets. And then what's left is going to be my profit. You have some questions that you want to ask yourself. Is this realistic? Does this make sense? Do I have enough profit to pay myself what I need? Excuse me. Do I need to make adjustments? This is where you really want to allow yourself flexibility. I mean, not too much flexibility because we don't want to be, changing our budget so often that there's no point in having it. However, allowing yourself the freedom and the flexibility to say, you know what, actually, this is not realistic, or maybe I'm profiting way more than I need to pay myself. That's a good problem to have. Maybe you do take a vacation in August, and you can, excuse me, you can adjust your budget. But this is, if you're going to take anything away, I want to think about this screen, maybe even take a screenshot or a picture of it, because this is the most important part, making sure that this budget that you've set is realistic, it makes sense, because a budget that's not realistic and doesn't make sense, you're not going to stick to it. And then it just, we don't want you to get down on yourself because you didn't stick to a budget when the problem in the first place is that the budget wasn't realistic. So making sure that you create a budget that's aligned, that, like my client said, she's excited about, that you love looking at on a monthly basis. That's how you're going to change, how, like Jenna mentioned, habits. That's how you're going to change your habits to be, hey, I love looking at my budget. Money makes me excited, all of those things. Okay, so I want to add in here real quick, excuse me, some extra tips for making your dollars work harder. This is really important because, as we all know, I think it's really important that we think about our dollars working harder for us. I know obviously we work for our money. We work really hard to earn our money, but we also want to make sure the money that we earn is working really hard for us, and doing the most that we can. So something that's really, really important is understanding your profitability. And we talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but not just your profitability overall, but your profitability per service or project. This is something we work with our clients with a lot. Let's say, again, I'm going to keep using the photographer example, but you're a photographer and you have, a 2-hour session, and making sure you understand all of the costs that go into that. And that's going to help you not only price, but making sure your profitability stays at a good place. The second tip I have for you is to understand your profit leaks. So a profit leak is something where it's like it is just draining your profit, like a leak in, I don't know, a tire or something like that. And excuse me, understanding those is really, really important, because then you can fix them if they need to be fixed, or you can adjust your pricing to fix them on that end. So common profit leaks we see, the most the most common we see is subscriptions, paying for subscriptions that you don't even know you're paying for. You maybe used to use, you don't use it anymore and you never canceled it, or paying for two subscriptions that do the same thing. And so you're paying more. But you could optimize it and maybe get rid of one of them and only use this subscription here. So that's a huge one. Another one we see is I'm gonna call some people out here. Another one we see is meals. And business meals are an important part of running a business, grabbing coffee with a client, or if you're traveling, grabbing food. Obviously, we have to eat while we're traveling. But this is something where we can see those numbers just creeping up a lot. And it's just something to keep an eye on. The third one here is strategic reinvestment in growth. And the question you want to ask yourself here is, with this reinvestment, I want to reinvest in XYZ. Maybe it's some new equipment, maybe it's a new subscription, a new software, whatever it is. You want to make sure you're asking yourself, am I getting a return on investment? Because look, I get it. It's fun to spend money on a new computer or office supplies, and we need all these things. But making sure that we are being strategic when we invest in things. And I'm talking also more so like big things. Let's say, a lot of my clients get to a point in their business where they feel like they've hit a ceiling and they think, I need to work with a coach. I need a business mentor to get to that next level. And so when you're doing those things, when you come to those decisions, making sure you're being very strategic about them and thinking about, am I going to get a return on this investment? I'll give a caveat here that, we can't always know those things. We're not always going to know that XYZ is going to be a good investment. I'll be the first to admit I have made bad investments in my business that didn't pay off. However, going into it, thinking about weighing all the options, getting testimonials, let's say, if you're going to be working with a coach, just making sure that you're making smart investments, and also realizing, detaching from the outcome in a sense of saying, you know what, I weighed all of these things out. I think that this is a good investment. And if it isn't, I'm not going to be hard on myself, because the last thing we want you to do is to beat yourself down because this investment that you thought was going to be great isn't. Like I said, we've all made those investments. The last one, and I think this might be the most important one, is remaining flexible. So we talked about this a little bit before, but just making sure that when you're budgeting, when you're looking at your sales goal, when you're doing all of this, that you remain flexible and you give yourself grace and give yourself patience, especially if budgeting is a new habit for you. It's not going to be perfect in the beginning, and that's okay. What the important thing is that you're starting and you're doing it and you're going to get better. Like anything, we get better as we do it more. So we have more reps and we practice more. So maybe it's hard in the beginning, and I get it. I there's things that I feel like, I feel that way as well. But making sure that we remain flexible and remain consistent is really, really important. Okay, so that's the last thing that I have. I wanted to leave some time for questions. If anyone has questions about any of this, anything else, please let me know. I'm an open book, and
Hey there, Annie. That was amazing. Thank you so much for all of that. We do have one question that I can go ahead and start off with here. So Carolyn asked if Dubsado has any tools for budget planning built in. I know that Dubsado doesn't have any planning tools per se, but I can talk a little bit about like our chart of accounts and how we would go about using that in Dubsado. But before I get to that piece, I wanted to get your thoughts on that, Annie. Like, what in Dubsado do you use on a regular basis as far as just thinking about this in general, budgeting and that sort of thing? But what are your thoughts?
yeah, so like Trevor said, there's not like specific budgeting capabilities in Dubsado. However, I think using the reports is really, really helpful in creating your budgets, because then you could use that again to inform your sales goals for when you're planning out your budget. The other thing too is using the integration. So We love integrating with Zero. Zero, we're a huge fan of. QuickBooks is okay, but we love Zero. Dubsado integrates so well with it, and then having that integration pulls everything into Zero, and then you can, again, you have that data in there, and then Zero does have budgeting capabilities where you can create your budget in there, and you have all your data from, your previous periods, and you're able to use that really easily.
Yeah, that's exactly kind of what I was going to get at there. Annie was using that integration between either Zero or QuickBooks. It's definitely going to be a great way to get started. And of course, if you don't or are not ready to use something like Zero or QuickBooks, you're more than welcome to use the Dubsado chart of accounts to still make your own income categories there. So that way, at least if you know, especially for folks who are just getting going, maybe, right? You can still create custom income categories and then, like Annie said, use those reports to gain some insights about your business that can really help you build these budgets. We have another question here from Vincenzo. He asked, is there a way to compare the income with previous year income? Dubsado does the previous month only. I hope it makes sense. So Vincenzo, in Dubsado, you should be able to do year to date, not just do the previous month, if I'm understanding your question correctly. But when you're viewing that chart of accounts area, there should be a way for you to look at year to date or last 365 in there as well. Candace asked, how does Zero help with making budgets? Do you have some thoughts on that, Annie?
So it doesn't necessarily help other than when your data's in there, you can kind of use the steps that we talked about to make your own budget. There's no feature that kind of guesses for you. There are other softwares that do that. But yeah, you kind of have to use the data that you have to make your own budget. We have a shop on our website that kind of has some resources for if you need help making a budget that might be helpful for you.
Awesome. And then just to double back to Vincenzo's question, because I was thinking about it a bit more. Vincenzo, if you're not seeing the view that you want to, you of course can definitely download a CSV file of the data you see from one year and compare it against the next. That should be relatively straightforward for you to do as well, since Dubsado does allow you to download those CSV files. Cool. Folks, let me know if there's any other questions here. We definitely have another minute or two. But I have a question for you, Annie. I'm actually curious. Where did 1428 come from, that number at least? Just curious about the naming of your company.
Yeah, so it's based on a Bible verse.
That's
So
nice.
there's a verse in the New Testament about it's like the gist of it is like, aren't you, before you start building something, because this was a long time ago, they
Sure.
were building whatever they were building, he says, aren't you gonna first sit down and make a plan for it so you don't run out of money halfway through? So I think it's very
Sure.
applicable to what we do.
That's extremely applicable. And I honestly would not have guessed that. That's really I love that. It's cool. Awesome. All right, folks. Any other questions, please feel free to throw those in the chat. But I think, Annie, you had I think one or two more slides that you wanted to share with us about maybe some of your offerings.
Yeah, so I wanted to share a little bit about what we do and then some offers for you guys here that are here. So, as I mentioned, we offer monthly bookkeeping and CFO partnerships and a lot of resources. We're big on providing resources to help business owners reclaim their time and peace of mind while increasing profits and healing their relationships with money, because that's a big part of what we do as well. So if you use this code DEBSAUTO40, you'll get 40% off anything in our resource shop on our website. So that's 1428financial.com/shop. And then this is a special offer we have for you. If you're at the point where you're like, I've been using a spreadsheet or I haven't been doing anything to track my finances and you want to get more organized, we're offering a special setup Zero for me. So like I said, Zero is the platform that we use for accounting. We love it. So it's $5.99 and we'll set everything up for you, show you how it works, show you how to use it. And then it's yours to use. You'll, like we talked about before, we're big proponents of a custom chart of accounts and making sure, as Jenna mentioned, making sure that chart of accounts matches what's in your head, makes sense, those two match up, then we'll do all of that. And yeah, so if any of you are interested on that, I have our contact info here and you can reach out and we'll be happy to help you.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Thank you so much for that offer there, Annie. I hopefully our attendees here will make use of that. I appreciate you making that available to them. We got a couple more questions flowing in here. But before we get to those, I'm going to go ahead and stop the screen share real quick, or you can do it on your end if you don't mind. But I'm going to ask you, do you mind if we share your slides with our viewers after the fact here? We can have it sent out via email, and then this is going to go on YouTube as well. Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. Okay, cool. So folks, if you're curious about looking at her slides, they'll be accessible to you. You'll get an email right after the webinar is done or a couple hours after. You can view these again. But let's get to these questions that we have here from Pam. So Pam asked, have you ever advised a client to raise prices when addressing the how much I want to make / how much I want to work question when setting sales goals? Is that something that you've advised clients to do in the past?
Yeah, and it is, and it's something that it's a very delicate balance, right? Figuring out because if you're going to be, let's say, we can't get too extreme with things, right? We can't say we're going to charge $10,000 for a 1 hour session or whatever it is. So you really have to reach a balance, and we do work through those things with our clients. But it also comes back to like no matter what, like I can advise my clients and I can give them advice and I can tell them this is what I think, but ultimately it's your decision. You have to feel good about the pricing, and I can look at it objectively and say, I think this is the best pricing. But when it comes down to it, again, it's up to you. It's your business, and you have to pick, or you have to decide for yourself what's going to be the best.
Totally. No, that makes sense. Definitely. Pam also asked, do you have any tips on getting the most from hiring a bookkeeper, just in general, I would say?
Yeah, yeah, I love this question. So I think the fact that you're asking this question is, step one in that, you're not just hiring a bookkeeper just to have one. I would say making sure that you hire a bookkeeper that not only works with your industry, but also works well, like you guys, your personality wise, work well together because bookkeeping and finances they're kind of an intimate relationship if you think about it because we're working on something that there's always a lot of emotions that surround money, and making sure you work with someone who you get along with. Our clients have become friends to us because we just have created those relationships, and that's really important to us. And then the other thing I want to say too is making sure you're reading your reports that your bookkeeper gives you on a monthly basis and making sure you're understanding them. Like for us, we not only do we have like there's an open Slack line they can our clients can contact us anytime with questions, but also when we start working with a new client, the first couple months we work together, we review your reports with you, because I truly believe that there's no point in getting a report, a profit and loss with a bunch of numbers on it when you don't know what those numbers mean. So making sure that you work with a bookkeeper that really emphasizes education and making sure that you not only have your reports done, because that's a part of it, but also understand those reports.
Definitely. Yeah. Paying someone to do your books and then having, reports that you don't understand sounds like you got halfway there, but there's no point in doing it if you're not getting that information and understanding it in an actionable way. That definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Cool. Jenna asked again, any tips on making a budget that lines up my profits and loss, but still clear as to what individual costs might narrow down to? AKA, I have an advertising and marketing section with a marketing subscription section that multiple subscriptions fall under. So it sounds like she just wants a bit more of a granular view of her budget, if I'm understanding that correctly. Maybe I'm not parsing that correctly, but that feels like a question that might be a more specific just to Jenna. But what do you have thoughts there, Annie? Anything?
Yeah, so I think this is where it comes down to having that chart of account, the chart of accounts that works really well for you, if I'm understanding the question correctly, and just making sure, I think sometimes we can get too in the weeds to it with it and just create a million different accounts. And I don't think we need to go that far. But that being said, it's your chart of accounts and your profit and loss, and we want to make sure that you're getting what you need out of it. So if you want to see different things separated out, then I think that that's a great way to do things if that's how your brain works and that's how you want to see them. Yeah.
Nice. Totally. Okay, cool. Another question from Candace here, and she said, what's the best way to handle debt in relation to those oops business decisions? That's a
Yeah,
good
that's
question.
a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, like I mentioned before, the first thing is to just not beat yourself up. Like for me, the easiest thing is just laugh at it. Like we've all made stupid mistakes, bad decisions in our business. Okay, it happens. Let's dust ourselves off. Let's move on. And if you have debt related to them, then reminding yourself on a monthly basis, like, that's what happens. Like or that is a thing that happened. Okay, then how are we going to best tackle this to not carry that forward. Creating a debt payoff plan there's a lot that goes into creating a plan for paying off debt. But my biggest tip for you is something that I see so frequently is paying off too much at once. Um, that might sound backwards, but if you're paying off too much at once, you don't have the cash flow to then run your business. So you have to then accrue more debt. And so creating a consistent amount that you can pay off each month, yes, you may pay a little bit more in interest and because you're not paying it off right away, but you're not accruing more debt and you're getting it paid off so that you can be done with it and move on.
Yeah, no, I hadn't even really thought about that from a debt perspective. But if you aren't leaving yourself in a place where you can continue to run your business, then you won't be able to finish paying that debt off. So that makes total sense.
Exactly.
Awesome. Kristen says she's got to go. Thank you, Kristen, for being here. Appreciate that. And then we had one comment from Michelle. She said, Annie set up my Zero account, which is linked to my Dubsado account, and it makes my monthly accounting so easy. I love to hear that, Michelle. That's fantastic. That's really great. All right. Cool. All right. That's all the questions that we have in here. But thank you, all of our attendants here. I appreciate all the questions coming in. These are all really, really solid questions to ask. I really do appreciate the interaction here. But I think we'll go ahead and leave it off there with that, Andy. I really appreciate you being being here with us today, and I appreciate you persevering. I know that voice is giving you a little bit of trouble, but that was a fantastic presentation, and I really loved all that information. And it seems like our viewers here got a lot out of it too. So thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you for having me and thanks everyone for being here. This was really, really awesome. And if anyone has any follow-up questions, just send me a message on Instagram.
Definitely. Fantastic. Cool. All right, folks, keep an eye out for that follow-up email if you want to take a look at any slides. This will be available on YouTube shortly as well. But otherwise, we hope you all have a great rest of your day, and we'll catch you on the next webinar. Thanks, everybody. Bye.